joining us today. My name is Julie Salganik, and I am a senior consultant with Vantage Partners. Vantage Partners works with corporations around the world to help companies negotiate and manage their critical business relationships most effectively. Based on the fact that you're listening to this, I can assume that you are managing key outsourcing relationships and that you are facing a challenge of thinking about how to measure those relationships and how to make sure you're getting the value that you need out of those. While I can't promise a comprehensive step-by-step process that fits all in such a short period of time, what I would like to share with you in the next 5 minutes are some insights from our work with buyers and providers over the years about ways in which people get into trouble and a few practical guidelines for measuring performance in ways that are more meaningful and more efficient and that drive the kind of business value that most of us are looking for. So we all want to get the most out of our outsourcing relationships, and the only way to know what we're getting out of them is to measure how we're doing. As deals grow bigger and more complex, there is increasing demand for accountability, and there are more and more elaborate measurement systems and a greater number of metrics that are being put in place and measured up against. Buyers are routinely using these kinds of deals to drive value beyond just cost savings, and so measuring the kinds of value you're looking for gets more complex. And yet, if you look at the research out there, most of the deals are underperforming in a variety of different ways. When we talk to our customers, we hear lots of different kinds of complaints. They look at their providers and they say, look, we're just not happy. We somehow expected better than this when we signed the deal. We expected more. We somehow expected things to be smoother. And there's a growing sense that providers are simply working up against the SLAs that are defined. So customers are saying that providers are working to essentially hit the numbers, meet the SLAs, and prevent the levying of penalties from going on. When we talk to providers, they're equally frustrated, and they're looking at their performance measurement systems and saying, but our dashboard is completely green. Everything you've asked us to do, we're doing, and we're doing very well, so how can you be unhappy? And if you are unhappy, why are you continuing to measure us on all of these things that just don't matter at all? We've conducted a lot of research to try to get at what gets in the way of realizing value in outsourcing relationships. And toward the end, I'll tell you about how to get a complimentary copy of a recent study that summarizes some of those findings. One of the biggest challenges we found is around SLAs. Because they must be objective and quantifiable, SLAs often focus on what is easiest to measure, things like on-time delivery, for example. As a result, providers tend to focus on meeting those expectations as well as possible. There is a sense that the customer is always right. We want to try to please our customer. We want to try to expand the business and so forth. And so we're going to do what we need to serve their needs as well as possible. As it turns out, what we measure tends to drive the behaviors. And so what we often see is a pretty significant over-reliance on metrics on both sides, and over time, that results in some problems. So first of all, we are shifting from doing the right thing and focusing more on doing what is being measured. And that leaves very little time for creativity, for innovation, for raising and discussing challenges and so forth. And that tends to suboptimize the results we see. If you're not convinced, take a look at this list. Here are the examples of the most common SLAs that providers fail to meet. According to a recent survey we've done, just about half of buyers thought that there was any significant business impact from not meeting these particular SLAs. That means that those SLAs that we're routinely missing don't have much impact on the customer at all. And so if that's the case, where does the business impact come from? Well, the answer is that we actually need new kinds of measures to drive the kinds of behavior that we're looking for. And there are lots of different sources of value beyond just cost reductions. So, for example, there are the simple things we're used to measuring around bottom-line savings that people are pretty good at doing. And we've gotten pretty good at measuring operating efficiencies as well. When you look at things like top-line value, access to new insights, additional innovation, so on and so forth, we are needing to find new ways to measure not just things we can track on MRP systems, but also individual perceptions. So then, what matters can be broken down in essentially two ways. First, there is the tangible versus the intangible. Tangible measures are essentially those things that are objective. They are things like costs, volumes, speed, the kinds of things that many of us are trading in and tracking in our ERP systems. The intangible measures are more subjective. They're far less easy to quantify, and they tend to focus on things like the quality of a solution, the value of responsiveness, customer satisfaction, and so forth. And they tend to measure individual perceptions. There are also two ways of looking at these metrics. One is around outcomes, where we're measuring the results of any particular activity. So this is the dollars saved, the number of issues resolved, and so forth. And then there are the indicators. These measure the activities that may indicate future problems or opportunities as well. These are things like efficiency, the degree of alignment, responsiveness, and so forth. Not surprisingly, the measures that are most often tracked in outsourcing relationships are the tangible outcome kind of measures, which tend to be financial. The intangible indicators, the things around relationship, for example, tend to be less tracked. And yet there's overwhelming data that the relationship impacts business results more significantly than many of these other factors, and that what you measure tends to get the attention that you're looking for. So, a couple of guidelines. Point here is this. We need to be clear about what value we want and measure those things that will drive that kind of value and show whether or not we're getting there. So in designing metrics, the best piece of advice I can offer is be clear on the purposes of your metrics. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Are you looking to collect compensation, or are you looking at motivating individual behavior? Are you trying to prioritize responsibilities? Are you looking to identify problems? Are you trying to troubleshoot? These will all drive not just the kinds of metrics that you put in place, but also the way you measure them and systems for analyzing the data and for reviewing it and taking action following it. Next, you want to be very clear about the kinds of metrics that are most relevant for your purposes. So again, tangible versus intangible measures, indicators versus trailing indicators. Are we looking at the ends, the value that we're getting, or the means, the activities which we are actually undertaking? And are we measuring the provider only, or are we going to measure our own impact as a customer? And how well we are either enabling or disabling the provider's ability to deliver the kinds of value we're looking for. Those are the best things I can share with you in 5 minutes. As I mentioned, there is a comprehensive study that we've done over the course of the last 2 years that we'd be happy to share with you. If you'd like to request a complimentary copy, please feel free to connect to the web address below. I thank you for your time, and look forward to hearing any questions over email if you so choose.